Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Michael Fix. G'day, Michael.
Hey, Scott. Yeah, thanks for having me here in your wonderful studio, and great to be here.
You do a lot of travelling all around the world, or have done in the past.
Have done,
Are you still doing the travel around the world thing? Or?
Look, I had to, once the pandemic hit, and obviously things stopped, but I haven't resumed that because a lot of stuff has changed in my personal life, particularly dealing with elderly parents, which makes it a little difficult to go a long way away from home for long periods of time. So I'm kind of just staying around home for the moment and just focusing on things, producing and creating music, recording production music, which I've always done, just not as much, not as many gigs and not so much traveling. Yeah.
Just recently you did a, do we call it a masterclass up in Mount Tamborine?
Yeah,
teaching.
yeah. It was a guitar retreat, like a full live-in, fully catered retreat. And that's an area for me that I'm really interested in. I've been a tutor at the Tommy Emmanuel guitar camp for, I think I've done 5, and I'm back again next year. And I really love that model. It's sort of the American model of music camps where people
there's
converge.
a lot of them. There's a lot of it in America, isn't it? It's a very big thing over there.
And it's a total immersion. I love that idea of people coming together in one place, and they leave all the problems of the world behind. They're just immersed in whether it's guitar or songwriting or whatever their passion is. And the fact that you're surrounded by like-minded people, and you've got all these social events surrounding having meals together and jamming and having evening concerts and all that sort of stuff. It's just really enjoyable. And I wanted to do one of my own, and that happened at the beginning of October. That was at Tamborine Glades, which is a lovely resort at the base of Mount Tamborine, and hopefully the first of many.
Yeah, I can imagine it being an amazing way to connect with like-minded people, but also, a great learning experience, because for people who go along, it's not only do you get to learn from people like you, but you learn so much just from everybody else around you.
Exactly, yeah, that's the thing. And everyone is different, everyone's at a different level, and it's possible for beginners and advanced players to be together and to actually learn from each other. And I'm always surprised. I'm often a bit apprehensive when I've got someone in the group and I realise this person can play really, really well, and I'm thinking, what can I teach them? And it's starting to get a bit like, oh, geez, this is going to be a challenge. And then I find that, they can play really well, but maybe they don't have an understanding of how music works or how chords are structured or all this kind of stuff.
There's a gap in the education.
Yeah. There's always something, and it's a bit of a challenge to find what it is that every person needs at that point to get them to the next level.
I can remember going through several phases. It always seemed to be one of those things where you'd go through a massive learning curve, then you'd plateau. And you'd seem to sit there for a while until some other new piece of information come along. And then all of a sudden you're off again, you're learning, and then you plateau. And I guess going to one of those things would be a great way to break out of those plateaus.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The thing is, we've got so much stuff on YouTube, and it's really helpful. But it's still not the same as sitting in front of somebody and you play something and then you say, but I always get stuck in this bit, and that person can then say, okay, what you need to do is this and this. YouTube can't do that.
No, that's exactly correct, yeah. What got you started playing music in the first place, and particularly guitar?
There was a guitar in the family. My dad played. He had an acoustic guitar lying around, although by the time I got interested at the age of 10, he wasn't really playing, but he had a folder of sheet music, which kind of told me what his era was. It was the hits of late 50s, very early 60s. So a few Elvis Presley songs and Don Gibson and various artists of that era. So the guitar was lying around, and I guess I was just drawn to it. I couldn't play it. When my dad saw I was interested, he showed me a couple of simple chords and G and C and A minor and E minor and those sort of chords. So I don't think at that stage I knew how to tune the guitar, although my dad had in the guitar case a little pitch pipe.
Oh, wow.
Before digital tuners, there were tuning forks and pitch pipes.
Yeah. No, I can remember the tuning fork, but I don't remember the
and,
pitch pipe. Yeah.
You know, and so very early on, I kind of had to tune into the sound and learn how to tune the guitar.
I guess that's something that young players wouldn't necessarily get much of these days, because I can remember the whole tuning fork. You know, you hit the tuning fork and that was A440.
Yeah.
And you'd get the A, and then you'd have to tune the rest of the guitar to that.
Yeah.
Which obviously is great for your development of your ear, but I guess most kids these days have the digital tuner, and you put the digital tuner, it tells you what note it is and tells you.
Yeah. I remember I was a little bit older at this stage. I was driving, so I would have been 17. I had a pitchfork in the car, and I'd pull up at the lights and grab it, put it up to my ear, you know, and that was, I guess, it was all part of the training in those days. You tuned up to other instruments or to each other, or to. It's things are made a lot easier these days, but I think something gets lost along the way.
Well, there's certain skills and talents that you had to be able to do that, and I guess making it easier skips that step. So there's certain, I guess, I mean, I see young players all the time in the studio, and there's some amazing musicians out there. And which, you know, gives you a really good hope for the future. Do you see a lot of that with students and taking these classes, like younger players that are really impressive?
Oh, sure, yeah. Lots of impressive young talent, but without a clear path of what to do with the talent, because it's not clear anymore. The advice that we would typically give to younger players is go out and gig. Go out and play as often as you can.
Yeah.
Which you could do 40, 50 years ago, you know, when I started.
When I started, it was, like bands were playing 7 nights a week.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember being in Coolangatta and doing a pub crawl on my 18th birthday.
Yeah.
And I think in Coolangatta alone, there were at least a half dozen, probably more, just in Coolangatta venues that had live bands playing in them.
Yeah.
And playing in them 5 nights a week.
Yeah, and that was a global thing too. It is so difficult now to, you know, what is there for young players if they want to get regular gigging experience? I don't know what the answer to that is. There are open mics, and I suggest, you know, as much as you know, playing for free is not a good business model. But as far as getting some skills in front of an audience, there's not much else to offer, really, is there?
When you first started, were you playing on your own, or were you playing in a band and with other people?
It was an era, the 1970s. It was definitely a band era. I started guitar lessons at the age of 11, and I had a guitar teacher. This is in Wollongong. That's my hometown. Mm-hmm. There was the Alan Phillips Guitar Academy.
Wow.
And this guy, Alan Phillips, he was the most wonderful teacher. He could play classical, he could play jazz. He taught me how to read music. He taught me music theory. He played bass. A really well-rounded musician who knew how to motivate a young player like me. Because he would always play things at the end of a lesson, and I'd sit there like, can you show me how to do that? You know, and he would say, well, we're doing the Mel Bay guitar course. You know, if you do, you know, this many pages and you get up to this point, you'll be ready. I'll teach you next week. You know, and of course, I'd be at home with the Mel Bay book, working away and doing all that stuff, and just to get to that, you know, learn those pieces. He was showing me amazing stuff. They were like, he had these Don Andrews jazz guitar books. So I'm 15 years old. I'm really not understanding the chords, but he's showing me things like chord solos, you know. I still remember this from those years. You know, these kind of jazz standards, I didn't really understand them. I was learning a bit like kids learning from YouTube now, learning by rote what these chords are.
Yep.
and there's obviously an immense amount of theory behind all that stuff. But at that age, it was playing those things and then playing them for other players who would go, "Oh man, that's incredible! How'd you, you know?" And I'm, "Oh, is it? You know, that was pretty cool." And so that constant motivation. I was always the young guy in whatever group of people I was around. Unfortunately, not the case anymore. but I had older mentor figures around me. I guess I was lucky that I didn't come across sort of jealousy or people going, "Well, I'm not going to show you." You know, people were always happy to show me stuff and compliment me and kind of lift my ego and help push me along. And I think that's really valuable too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I remember from my learning experience, one of the ways, probably the most motivational thing, and one of the ways I learnt heaps is going and watching other guitar players.
Yeah,
and go,
absolutely.
"Oh, that's how
True.
you do."
Yeah.
Like you couldn't, I couldn't work something out, and you'd go and see someone else, and they were playing it, and you could watch their fingers and go, "Oh, that's how you do that."
Yeah,
and you'd go home and practice it for hours on end.
Yeah, that's something, you know, it tied in with that idea of with young players today, the importance of going out and playing. It's also the importance of being able to see other musicians working, and that seems to be increasingly more difficult to do. But I've got I tend to be an optimistic person, and I've just got a feeling that, you know, music goes in phases, and I think the phase of live music will come back, and it'll be a reaction to AI.
I remember a time, it's particularly 70s and particularly 80s for me, where music was incredibly diverse. And even if you look at the 80s, where Tommy had big success with instrumental stuff towards the end of the 80s, in 1990, Gary Moore coming out with Still Got the Blues, and there was blues music was charting, which hasn't done for a while. I mean, I think you're right about the AI as a reaction to AI. And probably, hopefully, more acoustic music, maybe.
Yeah. I think we're coming into an era of doubt and people questioning. You know, is this real? It's happening already with what you see, and it's happening with music that's appearing on digital platforms. It's like, is this real? Even some YouTube guitarists who are doing stuff and being caught out for you know, and I think there will be the only way to counter that is a desire for people to connect with something that they know is real. And if they go to a bar somewhere and see a guy with a guitar or a guy playing piano or whatever, and they can see and hear what they're doing and it's real and it touches them in the heart, that's got to be a really powerful thing. And I think that's the feeling, or that's the event, that personal transaction that happens in a live music performance. I think that's what's going to bring people back to wanting to see live music and see it up close.
Yeah. You're renowned for being a great acoustic guitar player. Have you always played acoustic, or was there a period of playing electric?
Definitely. In my teenage years, I was playing in bands, so I was playing electric guitar. The acoustic guitar was a bit of a sideline. It was part of the singer-songwriter era. My favourite players like Cat Stevens, and in Australia we had Mike McClellan, and there's James Taylor, and all that music that was around that featured acoustic guitar. For me, it was just as interesting as Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and all the rock stuff and glam that came in later. It was all, anything that had guitar was interesting for me. The electric was definitely a band thing. I hadn't considered the acoustic. That time in my life, I wasn't thinking, what's my career path going to be? Is it going to be tied to this or tied to that? I had this vague notion that I started to realize I got bored quickly, or I was lacking commitment, probably both, So I'd really get into some blues and go, this is fantastic. This feels so great. Maybe I'm going to be a blues guitarist. Then after a while, I'd hear something else. I'd hear some jazz, or I'd hear some classical or whatever, and it'd be like a detour. And then I'd start to get went through a period of going, I'm never going to be any good because I'm not committing to anything. And then the thought process went, well, you know what? I actually really love all this stuff that I'm doing. When I was 15 and 16, I was playing in a band in Wollongong. It's a very multicultural city. And there was a band playing hits from Europe, the hit parade of Italy and Germany and France and Spain and Latin American music. And it was like this mixture of stuff. It was like, this is amazing. All these fancy chords and interesting rhythms and I loved all that. And then I joined a rock band and after a while I thought, I actually really like all this stuff and I can read music, maybe session guitar. That's going to be my thing. And I got really excited about that. And around that time, in my late teens, I set up along with 3 other partners, we set up a recording studio in Wollongong.
Okay.
And it was
a tape-based studio?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're talking like 1977, 78, around that era. Definitely tape-based.
There was no other option but tape back then.
Yeah, it was like pooling all our resources.
That would have been an expensive thing to set up.
Yeah.
That would have been quite a commitment.
One of the guys who was a sound engineer for the band that I was in, he and his newlywed wife, they bought a house and they had a separate garage, so we had a venue, right? And myself and another guy in the band, we had access to all the equipment in the band. We had a desk and a bunch of microphones and stands and cables. So that was our contribution. The other guy had a tape machine.
Oh, wow.
So that was the beginning. And that studio it's Main Street Studios. It ran up until about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
It became an SSL room.
Wow.
And the guy finally shut it down and, couldn't maintain a big studio like that anymore. But it started in a garage. So that side of it was always a really, really interesting. I loved recording. I found a way to hook my guitar up to my dad's cassette deck and record myself. And
that's an amazing learning experience.
Yeah,
recording yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because then you hear all of the problem areas.
That's right.
When you're playing in the moment, it always like, this is wonderful. And then you hear yourself recorded and you go, oh, got some work to do.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing with the studio was that we started doing jingles for local companies and demos for local singer-songwriters. So there wasn't much going on. We were pretty much the only studio in town.
Oh, wow.
So all this stuff was coming in. So I had this opportunity to learn a whole bunch of things, to apply all the knowledge, all the styles that I'd been playing and dabbling in, had a chance to use them. So it really reinforced this idea of, I could be a session player. That sounds, I love being in a studio. I love I love the gear. I love the experimenting with sounds and playing with effects and finding the right noise for the right moment and all that sort of thing.
I guess the other thing about doing advertising stuff, it's a great way of learning how to write a hook.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So it's good for the songwriting part of side of things.
Yeah, I definitely remember driving home from a gig one night. I would have been 17, and the radio was going, and it was about 1 a.m, and the jingle came on that I'd written and played on. I turned it up. It was like the biggest buzz, It was just like a 30-second jingle, rolling the window down, but there was no one on the road. It was like, put your radio on. That's me. Yeah, I did move up to Sydney and got involved in some session work via Tommy Emmanuel. Because at that time I'd hooked up with Tommy. We met at a place called the Musicians Club in Surrey Hills in Sydney, where he was playing with the Doug Parkinson band.
That's right, yeah.
And I started travelling up from Wollongong quite regularly to meet up with Tommy, to hear him play, to have some lessons, because I could hear a lot of stuff in his playing that was kind of really exciting for me. And I found out later it was the influences of George Benson and Django Reinhardt and Joe Pass and various rock gods as well, and Chet Atkins, of course.
Well, Chet was a big one.
Yeah. But
and then I think, according to Phil at least, the Shadows were an amazingly big influence too.
Yeah. But I could hear all this blend of stuff in his style, and it's like, I want some of that. I want to know what that is, you know.
Yeah.
I thought I had a diverse palette, but this was something else again. And so I started having lessons with Tommy, and I would drive him around to studios, and in doing so, I would go and I'd meet the producer, I'd meet the other musicians. I got to watch a bit of the session, and that in itself, incredible learning, you know, just seeing how that.
Back then, he was doing a lot.
He was
of
doing
sessions.
everything. Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, yeah. So with that, again, without even realizing it at the time, I was party to a really great education in that side of things. And
there's probably no better education, I think, in this country.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that. So it did. So we're talking 1980s here, and it did get me started in that, but it was already starting. It was the beginning of the end of the big studios and those big sessions. And I remember being called to sessions where it'd be like a McDonald's ad or something, and there would be the band set up, there would be a string section set up, there'd be some brass players, you know, the whole thing going, and a big budget, obviously, to pay for all that. And the job would be done in half an hour, and you know, you'd be well paid and go, wow, this is the life, you know, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah.
But as we know, by the late 80s, those big studios were starting to wind down, and budgets were diminishing. We were coming into a recession in Australia, so budgets were shrinking. One-man operations were just beginning, and drum machines were coming in, and things were changing pretty rapidly. But I'm so glad I had that experience, and I became one of those, you know, one guy with a studio doing drum programming and all that kind of stuff too. So, you know, I had a bit of a background in that. But yeah, great days, really great times.
Yeah. So what was the transition for you to go from playing in bands with electric and into doing acoustic and to some degree, I imagine a large part solo?
Yeah, you can blame Tommy Emmanuel for that one. When I got together with Tommy for the first time, he put on a Chet Atkins record, and the piece that came out was called Liebestraum from Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed. Right, so I'm listening to this. Hey Tommy, how many players is that? Is that two guys playing? No, just one. What do you mean? I can hear the bass and I can hear the melody, you know, and it was like, what's going on there? And, and then it was like having live YouTube. Then Tommy picks up the guitar and he plays, you know, and I'm like, what? What's going on there?
Is that where the thumb pick come from?
That was the thumb pick, yeah. And he obviously saw, here's a guy who's going to be totally switched on by the music of Chet, you know, and that was then the core, the path. I saw the possibility straight away of, man, if I could do that, I don't need a band. I can entertain by myself, you know, and I mean, it was very early days. I wasn't used to a thumb pick. I didn't have, I mean, I played some finger picking stuff and I'd learned some classical guitar, but this is a different technique.
That right hand thing it's a whole other world.
Yeah, a different hand position, the muting, the working on the tone of what the bass is doing, getting the independence between thumb and fingers, you know, that's the ongoing project, you know.
Yeah.
I'm still beavering away at that, trying to get it better and better, and that's the beauty of it. And so in the 1980s, when I was starting to unravel this stuff, and Tommy I moved up to Sydney. I was living quite close to him. He would lend me all the Chet Atkins albums and Jerry Reed albums, and I had tons of time. In the early part of the 80s, I had 2 gigs a week playing in a club band, 2 nights, Friday, Saturday nights, and the money from that paid my rent, paid my food, paid my phone bill, all my bills, and probably $100 left over. to buy some gear or whatever, or to buy an answering machine, which was a big investment in those days. But
well, like it's a funny thing to talk about now because the cost of living is quite high.
yeah.
I mean, you could live quite cheaply back then.
Oh yeah. My rent was $45 a week. I mean, I was earning, I think, $180 a night, so 2 nights of that. The rent was $45. The petrol was about 20, if that.
20 cents a litre.
Yeah. Groceries,
Well,
maybe
now we
15
look and
bucks.
go. Now I'm driving up the road here and seeing it's like, oh, the petrol price has dropped by 20 cents a litre.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was a nice to have that time. That I guess we all have a similar story of a time in our lives where before you're married, before you have kids, before you have mortgages, you've got these few years of paradise where you don't have any stress or money problems. You have time, and you could put all that time into, in my case, practicing the solo guitar.
Yeah.
Working on Chet arrangements and developing that.
How long was it before you were out gigging the solo guitar thing?
That didn't start until the 90s, but I was playing in a band in Sydney, a band called Hat Trick, and it was quite an eclectic band. We were playing 6 nights a week right through the 80s. And there was another guitar player in the band who's still one of my dearest friends, Justin McCoy, a great guitarist, bass player, mandolinist. And I started to show him some of these arrangements that I was working on, some of these Chet tunes. And of course, he was blown away. And so we'd work up guitar duets.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, Tommy and Phil were doing that in Sydney. So we were trying to come at it from a slightly different angle so as to not to copy them, but to do something unique with it. So we would do things like the guitar. We'd work these things out as the second guitars. Really fun, classical pieces. It was our band was playing some classical music, so rocked up classical classics, rock and roll rhythm section with a couple of violinists, and we were playing Mozart and Brahms and various other things. So it kind of fitted in neatly to do a little feature thing. So we do William Tell Overture, and then we might do Liebestraum, that piece I played before, and we'd start to slot those into the shows. So I was getting that sort of practical experience. And actually, even before that, I was working, when I moved to Sydney, I hooked up with a guy called Dave Douglas. He was a solo act around Sydney, created a duo, and there was always an opportunity to drop in a few things that I was learning. So a very, very motivating factor when you've learned something and you've got a gig and you can try it out, that focuses the mind.
It's also one of those things too, I guess whether you would agree or not, but it's one thing to sit and practice something at home, but when you go out and play it live, there's no safety net and you don't get to redo it. So it's like
Yeah.
when you're playing the stuff live, it really reinforces the practice, I guess, how much practice you've done.
Yeah. One live performance is worth 20 rehearsals.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of pressures that are on you that aren't there when you're sitting at home practicing, and it took me quite a while to figure out this dilemma of why is it that when I practice something at home it's perfect, then I go out on stage and I mess it up, and it's become one of the most common things I hear from people at guitar workshops and retreats and things. I can play perfect at home, but I get on stage and I start to shake and I make mistakes and
you rush.
Yeah,
that could be a big one.
All sorts of stuff.
Making it harder on yourself because you're trying to play it faster than you need to.
Yeah, and I was exactly the same, but I had to sort of confront this demon and go, okay, what's actually going on here? I've got to beat this if I'm going to get up on stage and perform. Having said that, I think I was more confident as a younger player, more confident than I am now.
Oh, wow.
So it's something in recent years I've confronted more and more, especially as I'm being asked about it a lot. And it is that thing of when you're practicing, you're in a safe, secure environment where everything is familiar, and as soon as you step out of that, things start to become unfamiliar, right? So my shortcut to getting from practice to stage is keep putting yourself one step out of your comfort zone. So it might be if you're going to perform a piece standing up, start practicing it standing up. Don't make your first public performance standing up when you've been practicing for 6 months sitting. Yeah. Things like walking into another room or walking while I'm playing to embed that muscle memory into what I'm doing, getting my body doing something completely different. Having a conversation while I'm playing to test, is the muscle memory working here? Walking into different rooms where the sound changes. So everything you do like that is causing a little bit of turmoil in the brain. You know, it's like, what sounds different here? What's going on? Somebody sneezed. Oh, that, you know, noises, things going on around you. And that's what happens on stage. You know, all those unknown factors that come into play. And you just have to get so used to your brain compensating for changes and different scenarios that eventually those things start to become normal. And I had always had this idea in my brain about getting a piece to the stage where I'm imagining in my mind I'm on stage and a waitress comes across with a huge tray of glasses and champagne bottles and trips and falls right in front of me, and I just keep playing and you know, that no distraction would put me off because it happens. People cough, phones go.
People yell at you.
Yeah.
Hey mate, play Kaysan.
You know, we had the best education in Australia, playing pubs and clubs and dealing with this night after night after night. So, you know, I've been at gigs and brawls have erupted and somebody collapsing and police arriving. Oh, you know, everything we've had to deal with, and it's what makes us stronger.
The 70s and 80s, there was a lot of live music in this country. At some point, you make the decision to travel overseas to play.
Yeah.
How did that come about and why?
The catalyst for that was a guy in Melbourne by the name of Alan Saman, who he created a business in Italy. He got funding through a government trade organisation to set up Maton distributor in Italy, and it was called Messiah Music. And he hired a manager in Italy and they started sending guitars over there. And this was in the early 2000s. He had a booth at a couple of trade shows. There were a couple of festivals. He kind of hooked into a bit of the circuit there. Now, Tommy Emmanuel was pretty unknown in Italy at that point, and Tommy was the first person that Alan took over to Italy to sit in the booth at the trade shows and play and to do some concerts on festivals and visit music stores to demonstrate Maton guitars. Phil went over as well, and I was I think third or the fourth. So this is 2004. I met Alan in 2003. Great guy, a really, really smart man with a classic sort of almost ocker voice. Hey, mate, hey, would you ever thought about going to Italy, mate? Oh, you'd be fantastic. The wine, mate. Oh, he really sold it, you know, the food and the wine and the whole experience. And I said, that'd be fantastic. I'd love to go. So he organised a couple of weeks in Italy, which was like a dream trip. It was like the gourmet tour of Italy. Every day was a culinary feast and just visiting all these music stores. And by that stage, Maton had introduced, at Alan's behest, this guitar, the Michael Fick signature model. So it was all kind of wrapped up with that. So we'd go into a music shop and they'd be carrying a couple of these and say, oh, this is the new guitar from Maton. This is the Michael Fick model. Oh, okay. And here's Michael, you know, and then I'd get the guitar and I'd sit down and play. And And that's how that tour, how it unfolded. But I have German heritage. I've got, at the time, my grandmother was alive and aunts and uncles. My parents came from a city called Dortmund in the northwest of Germany. And so I'm sitting at home. This is like, 4 months out or 6 months out from the trip to Italy. And I'm thinking, gee, fly up to Germany. This is like Sydney to Brisbane,
Yeah.
I should go and visit my relatives. Haven't seen them forever, and it'd be nice to. And then I'm thinking, I've got all my gear with me. I wonder if there's any chance of a gig somewhere. So I Googled, the very early days of Google. I Googled something like, I don't know, guitar concert Dortmund, and it turned out that on that weekend was the Dizzy Fingers Guitar Festival.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And guess who the headline act was?
Tommy.
So I emailed it, Tommy, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to be in Dortmund at this exact weekend. And he said, oh, great, I'll get you up and play with me. And anyway, then he responded a few days later and he said, here's the contact for the organizer of the festival. Tell him I sent you, and he might be able to do something for you. So I contacted this guy, and long story short, he turned it into a story of, he was like really happy, had another Australian, international, blah, blah, blah. He turned it into a story of like the prodigal son returning back to his homeland and to his roots and all this sort of stuff. And they sent the press to visit my grandmother, and that she had posed her with a poster of me, and she got a big piece in the paper. It was all really, But that began, I did, I think, 2 or 3 concerts plus a couple of appearances with Tommy. And at that point in the evolution of guitar music in Germany, Tommy was a driving force, and there was a huge interest in acoustic guitar music because of Tommy, because he was so powerful and energetic.
He's such a great entertainer.
Yeah. And
his playing speaks for itself.
Yeah.
But I think people forget how great an entertainer he is.
Absolutely, yeah. And they were used to, German audiences are fantastic. They listen intently. They really, get inside the music. Their experience of a guitar concert was more akin to a classical guitar recital, even if it was a steel stringer playing original music or singer-songwriter. It was all kind of polite and nice and different from the Australian ethos of get up there and stage and go for it. So there was this real spike in interest, and I came right onto that wave at the right time, and I met a whole bunch of promoters from different towns and villages who handed me their business cards and were doing guitar concerts regularly. If you're coming back to Germany, here's my contact. And then when I got home, I collected all these things and I contacted all these people and started to set up my own tours. And it just grew year by year by year. And they were all one-to-one connections. And it all grew from that one festival experience.
Wow. I got a couple of questions before we move on. I want to ask about taking other people over with you, like Mr. Jason McGregor.
Yeah.
Because I've had Jason on the podcast, and Jason talked about going over to play with you over in Germany. So we got a Michael Fix signature model, Maton.
Yep.
Can you tell us about that? What's different and unique about the Michael Fix model? What were your preferences when you was coming to being made?
Yeah, when they asked me about what would I like in a guitar, I was playing an 808 at the time. This one here was my first one. This one's from I played through the 90s, a Dreadnought guitar. Dreadnoughts, they're big and they're a bit bulky. And for finger picking guitar, when you want to move around a bit, I just felt a little bit clumsy. And I wanted a smaller body. So I had an 808, just a stock standard 808. And I really loved the guitar. And so Maton comes along in 2003 via Alan, my friend in Melbourne. Said, we're going to build you a guitar to take over to Italy, and what would you like? Your question. What would you like that's different? And I'm thinking, you know what, I really like just the standard 808, but I've got to do something different here. So a lot of the things were cosmetic. I mean, the cutaway was not typical, particularly at that time. So I said, yeah, I'd like a cutaway because I am doing stuff up the top here, up the dusty end. So that was one point of difference. The rest are, they'd ask things like, what sort of binding would you like? What colour, tuners? So I went for a deluxe look, gold, timber binding, just looks classy, and ebony fingerboard. That was a major difference, and that really just came from, I liked the look of ebony. As a young teen, my dream guitar was a Gibson Les Paul Custom, a black one, and I eventually got one, a black ebony neck. I just thought it looked cool, looked really expensive, And the other main thing, which you don't see now, was that I asked for the guitar to have very, very little tint in the finish. So it's almost white. When the guitar is new, the top looks almost white.
Oh, okay.
So you've got the black ebony, the gold, and the white. And in my mind, I thought if it's hanging on a rack of Matons, that's going to stand out.
Yeah.
And but I discovered that once they're out in the wild, within a year, it's getting yellow and darkening up. But it keeps changing colour, which I like too, But that was basically it.
Yeah. You touched on this particular guitar earlier.
Yeah.
And you explained to me it's the Albert Lee model. And this is a 001.
Yeah. My show and tell moment. There's big, bold, fantastic sounding guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one is from 1989, and it became my main performing guitar through the 80s up until about the mid 90s. It was being taken around by Neville Kitchen from Maton. He was on a trip up the coast, showing off a couple of their new models, and they had these what were then new pickup systems made by a company called Wayne. And one of the fellas who devised this pickup system, it's got this sort of timber look to it, and it works pretty well. No microphone or anything, but it sounded good. So it was it was there competing with Takamine. They're a good sounding acoustic guitar with a pickup system that works pretty well. And this one happened to be serial number 1, the first one of these, with the name Albert Lee attached to it. And I think they built 4 of them before they were told not to use Albert Lee's name because he was signed to, I think it was Ernie Ball, and they had to change the name of it. But this one's a bit of a rare bird for that reason. And I've got to thank Tommy again, because we met up in Brisbane. I met Neville. Neville had this guitar with him. Tommy played it, so it's a fantastic guitar. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, it sounds amazing. I would love to have this guitar. And then Tommy pipes up and says to Neville, Michael should have this guitar. Neville agreed. So when they finished their run of gigs, it got passed on to me. And, I use this a real lot for recording. Because even like
it does have a bigger sound.
It's huge, yeah. But it's very, very well balanced, very sweet. It's not boomy, and I love it. The sort of Merle Travis kind of thing where you can dig in a bit harder.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, very cool. I like this guitar a lot.
Yeah.
It was the first really decent acoustic. I had, at that point, I had in the 80s, I had a kind of a semi-acousticy sort of, for live gigs. It was an Ibanez. I don't know if you remember these. They were black Ibanez. I think Phil Emmanuel played one too. Thin body.
Yep, I know the one you mean.
That was my live gig.
And that was because, so they didn't feed back?
Exactly.
They had the thin body, so it wasn't very resonant.
Yeah.
So it sounded terrible acoustically.
Yeah.
But plugged in was
it was
okay.
a reasonable sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had another guitar, which it was a Yamaha. It was a really nice guitar, and that was my acoustic guitar. So that was the recording guitar and the stage guitar. And this came along. It was like, it does both.
Yeah.
And does them better than each of those. So it was a no-brainer, and sold those and then used this. So it was. I think of it as my first like really decent acoustic, the guitar that does both jobs.
Yeah. Obviously, recording-wise, acoustic guitars sound best when recorded through a microphone.
Yeah.
How have things changed with guitars live? Like I know most of the 808s now got has that one got a microphone
It's got the
inside?
microphone in it, yep.
So I've got a microphone and a piezo pickup, or?
Yes. Yeah, and it's a combination of the two. My setup, I keep it really, really simple. There is a microphone in this which I've got. It sort of sits attached to the pickup here. There's an arm that you can swing it around.
Yeah, because I've seen them sometimes. You can actually see the microphone in the sound hole.
Yeah, I think by default they come sort of in that spot there, so that you can see.
But you can move the microphone.
Yeah. But I often use a feedback buster on stage, it's the rubber bath plug that goes in there to cut down the feedback. And it does affect the sound of the microphone a little. So there's been a lot of trial and error, a lot of moving it around to find the sweet spot, and it's currently quite a way back here. But I have that on full, and I turn the piezo up, and I plug it into an AER, a little Alpha, which is the smallest amp in their range. I can fit it in a suitcase and travel with it.
Are they very heavy?
No.
So that's great.
Yeah. It's simplicity, based on, I guess, those tours in Europe where it was just me. So I've got the guitar on my back, I've got a cabin bag, and I've got a suitcase. And the suitcase has got my amp, my effects board, merch, and some clothes.
Wow. So you can't when you think about it, that's still carrying quite a lot of stuff.
It was about, in total, I was carrying about 38 kilos or so.
Wow.
Because the guitar was in a kind of a heavy duty flight case, but I had shoulder straps put on it. Yeah, but I was younger and fitter then.
So I had Jason McGurger on, and he went over, and you had this thing where you've taken younger players. Has anybody else you've taken over with you to play overseas?
Well, not so much taken over, but Hussey Hicks. They were in Italy on a couple of occasions, and they hooked up with the tour that was set up for me in Italy, and we did a bunch of shows together, and that was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean what a great musical force they are. And Jules is such an awesome player.
Yeah. Oh, they were back then. This is 2007, 2008, around that time. They were incredible then.
Yeah.
No, I think they were pretty early days for them. There was a band from Melbourne. They were a trio. I've forgotten what they were called. Lachlan Bryan, and I've just gone blank on names. But they were a Melbourne band. They were travelling through Europe. And we met up as well, and we did some shows together. There were the girls. There were a group called Bella, the three girl singers. They sung in harmony and played. We met up on a tour as well, and really, really good experience.
It must be a wonderful thing being overseas and hooking up with other Aussies.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
So we were speaking earlier, and I asked you how many albums that you've done. You see, you've done 20 albums. Mm-hmm. That's quite a catalogue.
Over a fairly long time, since 91.
You were saying you were doing like one a year at one stage, and they were based around having something new to sell when you were touring.
Yeah.
What's the split between original material and covers?
It depends on the audience. If it's an audience who know me already, I'll tend to play more originals. If it's a brand new audience, and it's like you're still dating, you want to show all your best
You want to give them something you're familiar with?
Yeah, I'll put in more covers, and I still have those pieces that we were talking about earlier that go back to the 80s, those classical arrangements. That's a great way to introduce something that's familiar to the ear, but that no one else is doing, or that's really unusual.
Is that something when you're doing covers, how do you select which songs? I guess that's, you're trying to find something that no one else is doing. Is that part of it?
There is definitely an element of that. There's got to be a real connection for me. It's not enough to hear a song and go, oh yeah, people will like that, I'll learn it. It's got to be a bit more than that. I've got to love it. I've got to have some connection to it, some story I can tell around it. But over the years, there's been, if I have an idea for a song, for a cover song, I would typically jump onto YouTube to see if anyone else has done it. And if I've found, oh, no one's really done anything with this in the solo acoustic guitar world, that'll be like, okay, that's another really good reason to invest my time and energy into this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a bit demoralising.
It must be hard finding stuff that Tommy hasn't covered. He's covered so much stuff.
Yeah, particularly in the early days when he was playing around in Sydney, and there were guitar instrumentals were still fresh on people's minds in terms of you would still hear things on the radio like Mark Knopfler, the theme from Going Home, and Chariots of Fire, like movie themes, things that were instrumentals, and Tommy and Phil would cover a lot of those things. An example is, for me, is to illustrate this point. I'm a member of APRA, and they have the APRA Awards every year. And some years back, I forget which year it was, they had an award for what was deemed to be the most, not popular, but the best Australian song, or something like that. And Eagle Rock was up there. I think might have been number 2, but number 1, it was voted. It was a voted thing. Was Friday on My Mind by the Easy Beats, and I thought that is such an incredible song. It's got this fantastic little guitar hook in it, and it, for a pop song, it really moves around. There's some interesting stuff.
There's quite a bit to learn in that one.
Yeah, I get home from those awards and I'm thinking, gee, I wonder if I could do an arrangement of that. And it's a great story. It was voted the number 1 song. We've got the AC/DC connection
with the Young Brothers.
Yeah, and then I would go onto YouTube. No one's covered this as a solo guitar thing, so I just start working away. And I put together the arrangement. It's almost like a classical guitar piece in some ways.
Oh, it's great.
There's so much going on in this song, and then back to minor. What a brilliant piece of writing, all those key changes and the movements and those little counter melodies. I thought, perfect arrangement for guitar.
And the only version I've ever heard of, cover version, is Gary Moore.
Yeah, and David Bowie.
Oh, David Bowie did a version.
So when I started playing that in Germany, everyone knew it from David Bowie.
Oh, wow.
So
I've never heard the version that David Bowie did.
Yeah. So I had a really nice story to tell around that song about Vanda and Young, how they were like the Lennon and McCartney of Australia, and George Young, brother of Malcolm and Angus Young, and all these connections, and people are like, oh yeah, it's like giving a little Australian musical history lesson. I had this really nice connection to that song that really gave it a lot more importance and meaning to me and the audience. So that's kind of the best example I can think of how I would choose a cover.
We were talking earlier, and you say that you do sing, and when you're doing shows, you might sing a couple of songs.
Yep.
I'm curious as to why, with the songwriting and playing guitar, why wouldn't you go more heavily down the route of singing songs?
Because there are so many incredible singers in the world that I don't feel I need to be competing with that, whereas my strength is in the solo guitar thing. So
Expressing yourself through the guitar.
Yeah, so I kind of make that my main thing, and the singing is a bit of added colour to a show for entertainment, basically.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I enjoy singing, and for me, it's almost like a very relaxing and restful part of the show when I sing, because it's a psychological thing. It's like, well, no one knows me as a singer, so therefore you're much more relaxed, and then you surprise yourself. Whereas if you're thinking, people are here expecting a great guitar concert, and you put this pressure on yourself, and you start to tighten up and get a bit nervous and tense about it. Where singing kind of doesn't have all that baggage attached to it.
Okay. When you're picking a song that you're going to sing, how do you choose that?
Well, I prefer to sing original songs.
Okay.
If it's a cover song, it'll be like, what can I do with this that's a little bit different? So it's the surprise thing. So I won't tell you what this is. I might use the other guitar because it's a bit more, it's a bit stronger. See if the voice is working today. So I might start. So, okay, it's a Beatles song. People are thinking, what's he going to play? And then I'll go into blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. So it's kind of like a funky version.
Yeah.
All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. So there's a little bit of, there's a surprise about it and a bit of familiarity, and so I'll try and bend things.
With live shows, when you were touring, did you find a promoter who would pay you an amount of money, or was it one of those things where you were taking a heavy risk and relying on ticket sales at doors? How did that work for you?
In Europe, it was always guarantees.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you knew beforehand, you knew you were going to make a certain amount of money?
Yes, yeah. And I could almost predict the amount of CDs that I would sell as well.
And they were a bonus on top?
Yeah. And they would generally be 10% of the audience. So if there were 100 people, I'd sell 10 CDs. Some nights it'd be 15 CDs. And this is we're talking 15, 20 years ago. People are still buying CDs. And it was a bit more predictable. But particularly in countries like Germany, many villages and towns, they had their sort of cultural council. So they might have a venue, might be similar to like a council venue here. And if someone like me got in touch with them, or via a local promoter, he would find it easy to sell me because there's only one of me, and they always supply accommodation and feed you and give you a bottle of wine, and it was all part of the thing. It wasn't like you didn't have to ask for it.
Yeah.
So one person is going to be much more affordable, but someone from Australia, it had a real we're going to have an international artist in our little village, and this was a great selling point for them. And I could speak German.
Oh.
And that was almost like because by then, I got better and better at it. and I would do jokes and I would do my whole shtick in German, which was kind of like a schoolboy German that I picked up from my parents when I was a kid, you know.
Okay, so people were very forgiving.
Oh yeah, it was hilarious for them to begin with because my German was so. It was of an era. It was 1950s schoolboy German with bad grammar and some of my parents' dialect thrown in because, you know, countries like Germany and England and most European countries, every region has a dialect and has a slang.
Well, I guess we'd know that very much from England, even like different areas of London have different accents.
Yeah. And people found this really entertaining and amusing. And I was told by my aunt, I have an aunt who's about only 5 or 6 years older than me. And she would be in hysterics and she would come up to me after the show and she'd say, "Do not improve your German. It's got to stay as it is. It's fantastic."
It's part of the entertainment.
But I kept going back year after year and it improved.
Yeah.
And I wasn't so funny anymore.
Oh, wow. Is your music available on streaming services?
Yes, it is, yeah. And I've recently discovered Bandcamp.
Okay.
Like everyone, feel the frustration of earning 0.002 cents per stream and, you know, looking for alternative ways to get my music out. And Bandcamp I've put everything up there.
Okay.
And, you know, it only needs one person to download an album, and it's equivalent to many, many thousand streams on Spotify.
Yeah.
But it's out everywhere where it can be, I guess.
Last week had planned on doing, and you had a recording session. But is that for your own material or is that for someone else's stuff?
That's for an artist that I'm producing, a lady called Jean Caskelly. And that's been something I've been doing since the late 70s.
Well, you had originally having the tape-based studio in Wollongong.
Producing people, it's something I really enjoy. I'm mainly working with singer-songwriters, more acoustic-focused acts. I record bands. I'm playing with a band in Brisbane called Asleep at the Reel. And they've done 3 albums, which I recorded and produced, but I'm kind of a somewhat floating band member as well.
When you're playing in that band, are you playing acoustic?
Electric.
Still whipping out the electric?
Yeah.
What's your favourite electric to play?
Oh, it varies from week to week. At the moment, I'm playing an R9 Les Paul standard. Okay. Yeah, flame top guitar that I picked up quite recently. That it's, you know, there's nothing better than using guitars on gigs to really understand how they work. You know, you can fiddle around with it all day in the studio, but in the heat of battle, when you want to very quickly dial in sounds, and you know, I've rediscovering that whole side of my youth. So there's a nostalgia attached to it as well. And this started during the pandemic. I was jamming with bands and just getting back into electric playing, and I was very nervous about it and felt it was felt like a foreign land, you know, to be on electric. But after a while, I started to really get into it. And I remember a time in my life where I was quite obsessive about my tone, and I could never sound the way I heard it in my head, you know, and it was because I was always seeking someone else's sound, you know. I went through the Larry Carlton phase, so I bought a 335. I still didn't sound like Larry Carlton. Then I bought a little tube amp and had it modified in Sydney by a guy who did the sort of mods that Carlton had, you know, and still didn't sound like Larry Carlton, you know, and this constant searching for something and never finding it, and then having this long break from it, and about 6 or 7 years ago, picking it up again, just plugging into an amp with no effects, using a Telecaster and going, wow, all those classic telly sounds, I'm not having to search for them, they're there, how come? And then plugging in a 335 and just finding that sound and realizing I must have just overthought everything, and now I was coming at it fresh without all the baggage. Yep. And enjoying the sound that I'm getting out of a guitar and amp, and I still keep it really minimal. It's finger style on an electric guitar. I might have a boost pedal and a tremolo pedal, and the amp is doing the rest, and it's fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Are you playing live, or have you got anything coming up that people would want to know about that they can come and see you play?
Yeah, I'm not doing a real lot of like full solo concerts. My next activity is the Mullaney Music Festival. I'm playing with the band, but also a couple of solo sets, just short sets. But on November the 30th, I'm playing like a full concert at a place called the Cardigan Bar in Sandgate.
Okay.
On the north side of Brisbane, yeah, and that's sort of one of the very few solo gigs that I do as a full show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Before we do finish up, of all the things that you've done, and I would imagine there's a diverse range of different things, from recording, playing electric, acoustic, band, solo shows, travelling overseas. What would be, if you had to pick one highlight of all the things that you've done, what would that highlight be?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask. I think it's hard to beat one particular concert experience, or it was just one song, and it was a television event called Celebration of a Nation. It was Australia's Bicentenary. And the concert was in Darling Harbour in Sydney with an orchestra. And it was actually meant to be Tommy's gig.
Oh, wow.
And he was double booked. He was doing something else. And Tommy asked if I could do it, and the organisers agreed. And it was to do his arrangement of Classical Gas with the orchestra. There were 250,000 people on the foreshores, Darling Harbour. And it was a televised event. With the helicopter shots and the whole thing. And I've got it on my website. I've got the clip of that performance. Yep. It was massive, and it had all these extra stresses attached to it. One was that, yes, of course I knew Classical Gas. I'd been playing it since teenage years, but it was the original Mason Williams version that was in my muscle memory. And Tommy had a whole totally different thing going on with it.
Yeah.
To learn that, and I had to learn it note for note because it's orchestrated and it's played with the orchestra, so there was no room for bluffing or leaving a section out, or And that year I was playing at the Tamworth Festival, and I was playing regularly. I was doing solo shows every single day for about 7 or 8 days. So I would play that piece every single concert to get the memory there. And I would stuff up something every single time until the last gig. I finally nailed it, and I needed that mental thing, that switch to go, okay, you can do it. You've done it once. Comes the day of the gig. It's being filmed sort of late in the afternoon. A storm came through, so we had one rehearsal with the orchestra, and then it started raining, and the string players are like, "Nope, we're out of here." You know, that was it. And then it was bang, live to air. And I thought, in hindsight, that would have been the gig where I could have just totally gone to pieces. You know, it's like the pressure of that thing.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it, and I had a great experience, and look at the video of it now and go, wow, I was onto it. I nailed it that occasion. That was a big occasion, and I did it.
Yeah.
And so that stands in my mind as a highlight.
I guess that thing is the sense of that tension and release too, because once you've done it, it's like the joy of going, okay, I've got through it.
That's right, yeah. And there's this curious thing of, in some ways, it's more unsettling and nerve-wracking to play one-on-one right in front of you compared to 250,000 people that you can't see their faces because they're on the other side of Darling Harbour.
Oh, right, yeah.
Or if there's a camera right there, well, the cameras went in helicopters, and I wasn't really aware of it. So it had this surreal thing about it, and there's this big noise going on with the orchestra.
Have you done that very often?
There was one tour I did with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra. It was a group of artists signed to the ABC label, and there was a project that they did called it was called Gershwin Country. The country thing was that they were all country artists, Tanya Kernigan, Troy Cassadaly, people who like that, and people signed to the ABC label, performing the music of Gershwin. And I had an instrumental track of a Gershwin tune, which I've forgotten now what the title of it, but it was a beautiful ballad, and I played nylon string guitar for that, and it would start off with just the nylon string solo, and then the orchestra would just swell up behind me, and the hairs, just thinking about it.
I guess it's one of those things for anyone who hasn't ever experienced a live orchestra. It's acoustic instruments making this massively huge sound.
Yeah.
It's an experience.
It's really wonderful. Yeah. It definitely came off that tour going, geez, I wish I could do this all the time,
Yeah.
But who can afford that?
Because I guess it's the energy of all those people making that sound too.
Yeah.
It's that shared experience. It's like the more people you get to share it with, the better it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I got to say, thank you very much for spending some time. I'm going to put links down below in the description for where you can find Michael on Bandcamp. Go to his website, check out his social media, and go along and see him play.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. We'd love to see you there.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Been a pleasure.
Yeah.
A good hang.
Yes. I'll see you on the next podcast. See you later.